Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So we're coming to the end of our 3-month retreat. It's sort of slightly deceptive, as if something's kind of ending when really it just changes. But there's always that, question. Well, was that useful? Where does it take you? And is that just one other thing that happens and then it's gone and life goes on as usual? It seems that so often we can be in experiences that when they're happening, we're in it and it's all wonderful and terrible or whatever, and then ring the bell, turn the page, and it's another story. And what was all that about? Things we can experience. So you can't really place too much validity just on changing nature of appearances. Appearances are not just visual appearances, but appearances in the mind. We feel happy, we feel sad, we feel wonderful or dejected or convinced or despondent or whatever, and and then so it's this sense of the very innate change of all this is something to itself is a tremendously useful teaching and practice in its own right, just letting it all shift and change. And what remains? What is it that remains? Does anything remain? What are you left with? What does it take you to? What can you take with you, if you like? If you're leaving, or the situation is changing, what can you take with you? What are you left with? What's been established? It's not going to be quiet. When it's not quiet, it's not so stable. Things are coming and going, and it's not coherent. Same as when we have meditation retreats, and then it finishes, and then you go back, and life is tumultuous as usual, and where did that all go? So it's quite a kind of common experience, isn't it? We very all worry about it, like, oh right, it was very nice and steady and calm, and now what's going to happen now? Oh dear, things are going to start up, and so on. Appearances, changes, different kinds of feeling, different energies, different input happens. What happens when you leave the monastery? There's a certain stability and steadiness about it, even predictable. What happens when you leave that? All kind of, it's got to fall apart, hasn't it? In one way, it must go. You can't carry visual experiences, tempos, rhythms of day. You can't carry them with you. They're all very susceptible to change. Pleasant people, you can't always have pleasant, calm people around you. It's all that subject to change, isn't it? Doesn't mean it's not pleasant or useful, but the usefulness has to go beyond that. So one of the most really important qualities for people to find and establish and know and be in touch with in their lives, it's called faith. Well, that's the English word for it. Actually, there's several English words for it. Confidence is perhaps better. Conviction, trust, confidence, something of this nature. With this, you feel together. You feel okay. You can manage. You can manage the world of change. You have faith. You have confidence in something, real deep confidence. And without it, life is very precarious. So, people in general look for something to have confidence in. Religions, beliefs, financial security, political systems, or each other, to find something that will feel reliable and solid and steady. Such an important thing to have that experience. Without it, despair, despondency, depression, even suicide, if they lose that. If we don't have that, what's the point? Can't really feel steady, whole, complete. And so this is something that people instinctively search for. When you're very small, it's in your parents. They give you that feeling of there is a solid reality here that will be there and look after you and so forth. Solid reference point. And then you gradually move through that and find out perhaps they're not so solid as you thought they were, or they disappoint, or they have limitations. And then we look for something else, and it goes on, doesn't it? So there is that search for faith, for an object or a situation to have confidence in, and we get it partially, enough of it partially, and yet it generally means we have to compromise. We don't feel completely confident in that, but we feel, it's okay. It's enough to keep going with. And people will often subscribe to beliefs to fill in the gaps. God, for example, some God or another, and and it can give them a tremendous resource. So often one does find that in situations where life is not very certain, people have stronger faith in God or gods or Great Spirit or wherever it is, Shiva, Krishna, whatever, because there's not much else to hang on to. So all that need gets projected onto something beyond this world. If you can't find anything in this world of appearances, then you try and find it somewhere else. And so quite a lot of religion is based upon that need to find confidence. And it can it's often in situations where there's not much confidence available in the worldly condition of wealth or security or finances, that people will place their faith in something immaterial, religious, God, something they can't see, and it keeps them going, And it runs right across the board. Human beings, whatever they're Catholics or poor people in Sicily or somewhere like that, they don't have stronger faith than well-heeled, sophisticated people living in Milan, in the same country, who've got, well, they don't need God anymore because they got, so many billion euros in the bank. And when I was in Tibet, noticing the tremendous people have this tremendous faith in their mantras and their prostrations, and in that, and it keeps them going through some very, very difficult circumstances. So you can kind of poo-poo it as just superstitious, but it does work in some sense. If without that, what would it be like? What would it be like without that? How would those people survive? How would they just not end up falling apart psychologically without something? It keeps them going. And if that source of faith says, well, if you have faith in this, then you've got to be good, behave, be kind, be wise. That's what's part of the equation. Then this is not necessarily a bad thing, is it? So I really didn't have much of a religious upbringing. We used to have religious education at school. We'd read the Bible, which didn't really make a lot of sense, but bits of it were quite interesting, and the kind of bashing and begatting of people. When you're about 12, that seemed quite interesting. God was either slaying or begatting. People were slaying and begatting each other. But it wasn't something you felt you really could, find that more relevant than what was going on television, which was pretty much the same thing. And then, the New Testament is somewhat different, and then Jesus and dying to save us from one's sins, which is pretty mind-boggling. Like, how's that going to help me? But somebody went through this horrible experience with some sense of doing it for my welfare. You think, well, that's pretty amazing, and love and forgiveness and so forth. So I remember I was about 15 or so, really trying to get this, and get it, because it still couldn't quite get how this person going through this miserable experience of being nailed up on a cross was actually going to help me any. So I was kind of trying to be grateful for it. But then I noticed there was a few people in the school who really got it. And they were kind of lit up, and some of them were the teachers. They were really lit up with it. They were very, very convinced, very passionate. And I thought, well, I wish I felt like that. They really felt, this is it. Jesus is Lord. Jesus is there for me. Jesus is going to look after me. I've opened my heart to Jesus. He's here for me. I thought, well, that's great. How do you get it? Because it wasn't happening for me. But I was very impressed with people who could get it, because they seemed so tremendously, such a tremendous pivot in their life. And I was confused as to what was right and what was wrong, and life didn't look very good. There was threats of nuclear war and being wiped out by, nuclear bombs at that time in the 60s, and the economy was slumping. It was, what's the point of all this? So there wasn't really a source of something I couldn't get it, but I could certainly respect, in some sense, people who did get it. Got something out of it because they seemed so solid, and life was manageable from that position. But it wasn't happening for me. So that's, in a way, that kind of got me inquiring as though, how do you find a centre, an axis, kind of something you can orient around when things in some ways seem so meaningless or relatively so. You could believe in this or you could believe in that, but You could be, an anarchist or a Democrat or a monarchist, or you could be a Muslim or a Jew or a Christian. You could believe in any of them, but which was the right one? And so it all seemed very relative to me, nothing that felt so absolute and ultimate and solid, just matters of opinion. And so, where does it come from? What's the experience of that? Whatever triggers it, whether it's, Jesus or Buddha or Allah or Muhammad, what is it? What's the experience of it? Experience of a sense of certainty, conviction that enables one to feel steady, calm, together, coherent, not falling apart in the face of circumstances. When things are changing, when people are falling apart, when there is death, when there is poverty, when there is crisis, when there is conflict, and you still feel you still feel together. That's what that word, that small word means. We tend to take it as belief because sometimes people will adopt a belief in order to have that experience. They'll hold on to a belief in order to have that experience. But what I noticed also, that people who came from that always had to go around convincing everybody else of it in order to keep their belief, their faith strong. Then believing it themselves wasn't enough. You've got to go and tell somebody else and get them to believe it, and then you feel your belief has been amplified. So sometimes I meet there were lots of evangelists. You meet those come around, they knock on your door, and would you be interested in this, that, and the other? And obviously, they felt some tremendous need to get other people to believe in what gave them their sense of conviction. And the flip side of it, of course, is that with these and with other folks, that thing can go off, and then suddenly, they get disillusioned. Either the teacher or the system or the church or the leader or whatever fails, and then the whole thing crumbles, and there's this huge fallout, disillusionment, which and then kind of people really plummet in that, as we do when we feel betrayed by another person we placed our trust in. You feel that same sense of something lurches and you don't feel so solid anymore because the person you had faith in has let you down. They weren't honest, they weren't true, they weren't what they said they were. And there's this huge cascading of falling and disappointment, and you feel quite unsteady with that. So the faith is a very important experience. The problem is that we will often, can we place it on something that's not going to fall away? Because if you place it on something that does fall away, then when that falls away, there's such a huge loss and despair. And as it happens with many, in cases where people have had faith in some spiritual teacher, and then he or she blows it, generally it's money or sex or power or something or the other, and they lose it completely, and then, the person who had faith in them is devastated, and they'd never have faith in anybody else again. They lose it completely. One of our training rules is to you can't claim enlightenment, for example, even if it's true. Even if you are awakened, you shouldn't make public claims about it. If you're not awakened and you claim it, then that's considered a defeat offence. It means you have to leave the order. That's pretty serious, isn't it? So if you claim to be awakened and you know you're not, then that's it. Because making such a claim means you draw other people's faith towards you. And if you're not capable of really holding that, then there's such a huge fallout from that. So it's like killing people. And there's only these 4 offences in the training rules that amount to this, what's called defeat. And one of them is this claiming to be awakened when you're not, or even claiming any kind of supernormal state when you don't have it. Because from a Buddha's point of view, in this way, you're killing people. You're killing them, but you're killing their faith element. What's it like when you lose faith? Yeah. And some people lose faith, they never get it again. When they've been had placed all their faith or their confidence on someone who wasn't capable of living up to it, and then they lose that. Sometimes they're never able to have faith in anything again. So it's why, you're looking really into the nature of the human heart, human being, and respecting it. So, and the other training rules, even if you are awakened, then you still don't make any claim about it, because it's the danger of it is then that the person has faith in you rather than in what you're pointing at. Yeah. What you've experienced or how you got there. And then, so the important thing is to say, well, look, this is what you can do, where you can go there, and you don't make any claim about yourself, even if you've realised that. So that's to my mind, it's very skillful, because it places it directs one's faith element towards a place where you're not going to lose it, because it's been established by your own clear process that you've worked on and arrived at yourself, not upon something external to that, not something that's been given to you or something that you've believed in, but something you've actually dug or unravelled or found your way to. When you find your own way to it through your own clarity and your own reliable examinations, then you know that, and something has shifted, something has changed. And essentially, this quality of complete faith in the Buddhist understanding is this sense of not being the unshakable, not being shaken by circumstances. That's one way of putting it. And from the world of circumstances and appearances, it sounds kind of negative. From the world of circumstances and appearances and feelings and thoughts, it sounds negative, because it's sometimes expressed as a complete sense of disenchantment with the world of appearances. You don't believe in it, you don't buy into it, you're not convinced by it, you're not excited by it, you're not annoyed by it, you're just not in it. It's just that. And from the person who only knows the world of circumstances and appearances, this sounds like so negative and cynical. But through practice you begin to recognise what the world of circumstances and appearances does. It certainly happens, but it doesn't go anywhere conclusive. It doesn't go anywhere final. It doesn't go anywhere really solid. It just keeps on rolling like one of those Mandelbrot sets. Have you ever seen that thing? This kind of computer-generated image that through running a mathematical formula, it just produces an endless cascade of images that has no end. And every one of them is dazzling. And then you press a button, it goes on, another one appears, like an ever-rolling kaleidoscope. Yeah. And they're all of them, wow, look at that, look at that, look at that, and then, oh, look at that. And after maybe an hour, you're going, but so what? And that's that. Yeah. So, in contemplation, you're contemplating the world of appearances and circumstances, events and phenomena, and you think, yeah, and then, and so what? And through processes like meditation and retreats, it's, we have particular systems and meditation exercises, yeah, but they act as kind of primers for your attention, sharpen your attention, clarify your attention, clarify your awareness. And often what's happening is you're just scrolling through these mental scenarios, yeah, memories, thoughts, impressions, feelings, moods, hopes, anticipations, passions, disappointments, projects, issues with some other being, other person, the past, present, future, alive, dead, near or far, somebody you're kind of wrangling with or psyched up about, or yourself, scrolling through this stuff, And that's what happens on retreats. People think, what's your technique? And no, it doesn't matter really what the technique is. I have a sort of a technique I teach, but notice after a while, nobody really does it. And then after a while I notice, well, actually I don't do it all the time either. I start off with that and give it a go, and then after a while the mind sort of, and it wanders a bit, and then you kind of pull it back a bit, and then it wanders a bit, and you pull it back. What's going on? And there's this kind of feelings, moods, perceptions, images, painful ones, terrible ones, joyful ones, irritating ones, niggly ones, stupid ones. Some little ditty starts going in your brain, and you think, oh, what's that? Who's that? What's that remind me of? And scrolling through stuff, and after a while, getting less and less activated by it. You don't really find an issue with it. You don't search for an end for it. You don't analyze yourself in terms of it. You just, this is the mind. This is what minds do, don't they? On one level, they kind of operate like this, and you're just like. It's like when you have a rattle when you're a baby. You see little kids, little tots in their carriages, and the mother will have a string with these beads, and the little baby will kind of pat this thing, and it rattles around. Keeps the little one occupied. But after a while, you don't do that. You grow up. You come out of that. It doesn't get you going. And this is rather like the process of retreats and meditation is rather like that. Like you're not excited by the teddy bear anymore, or disappointed by it. It's not an issue. And the scrolls, the stories and the phenomena of the mind eventually become something, it's not really a topic, an issue. And when it's no longer an issue, it's sort of the colours drain and fade away, and it does that, doesn't it? It drains, it fades, it's that. And that's not through aversion, or that's what it does when you don't activate it, we don't get stimulated by it, whether you don't identify with it, we don't make an issue out of it. It tends to drain and fade. And in the draining and the fading, you don't feel drained yourself. You feel clear and steady and grounded and simple and open and obvious and it's like the music's playing, but you're not dancing, and eventually the music starts to fade. Well, it's just this kind of process that happens. And the beauty of something of that nature is that it's not through volition. You see, we're not trying to make it fade. It's like you're trying to believe in fading as something that's good for you, or trying to make it work. It just does it. And that's why one can have faith in it, because it's faith that's something that arises almost of its own nature, or ceases of its own nature. And the somewhat paradoxical realizations in Buddhism are about ceasing. Ceasing doesn't sound very good. You have faith in ceasing? It sounds so negative. From the point of view of appearances and circumstances and events, it sounds kind of negative. As an experience, it's anything but negative. The mind feels kind of steady and clear and peaceful and calm. The heart isn't agitated. Yeah. And through really getting that as through when you begin to get that with a sense of understanding it, then faith is established through wisdom rather than belief. That is, through wisely knowing and seeing phenomena, or most anything the mind can do. That's why it's so useful to see it not in terms of a particular circumstance or a particular level of concentration or a particular situation, but just seeing it, this is what the mind does, and you can begin to get the intuition and the confidence that whatever arises in the mind is of the nature to cease. And the ceasing is not dead or annihilated, it's extremely affirmative, clarifying, valuing, enhancing. You get a sense of something unshakable through that. And this is because this is the way the mind, because of the nature of mind, or citta. And just to explain this term, because we have, a word like mind is quite a minefield of interpretations, but this is what the citta, like this monastery is called citta viveka, which means the mind that is not attached. It's a reference to a quality of this ceasing. Peaceful mind, called a peaceful mind. Doesn't really exactly translate, but it's a mind that's withdrawn from getting engaged and activated, and so it's peaceful. And it really means, citta means something perhaps more usefully like awareness. Sometimes people translate as heart. Basically because often the understanding of what mind is the thinking system, thinking and organising. And that's an aspect of mind, but we would see that very much as just one particular aspect of mind. And the fundamental aspect of mind as awareness is, it does two particular processes. One, it is affected. It's affected, it's in a way that sights, sounds, touches have an effect. We seem to internalise them. They don't just affect our eyes, they affect an awareness. We feel moved, we feel happy. It's associated with feeling. It's associated with what's called perception or impressions. That is, something means something to us. We're able to restore that meaning. So, but feeling is the quality of pleasure or pain. Perception or impression is the sense of something means something. It means something like you see an object and that's a car. You don't have to, and that stays with you. Next time you see it, you still know it's a car, and you begin to identify other objects made of metal with wheels on as cars. You don't have to kind of keep discovering what the thing is. You have a way of assessing experience and storing up the meaning of it, and then you can then use that meaning. Of course, that's a very complex process, because we have simple meanings like car, tree, cow, dog, bell, and you have more complex meanings like important, unimportant, urgent, lovely, friendly, beautiful, and so forth, which are much more complex in their power to move us. So you get meanings which have extreme potency to us, where we store them up, something sacred. That's another powerful one, isn't it? Something holy, something lovely, friendly, welcoming, and then disgusting, vile. These are tremendously powerful meanings. And where do they happen? Does a rose say, "I'm beautiful"? No, it happens in this awareness, doesn't it? So there's this whole area of perceptions, and what comes up with that is various degrees of response. We feel activated. We feel trembling, we feel defensive, we feel something reaches out, we feel uplifted, something activates. So these three things, all this is the nature of being affected. We feel, we have an impression, and there's some kind of activation of response. And that happens. That's what happens in awareness, in citta. So all the time, that's going on. Everything is running in, it's touching that particular experience, it's being processed through that. Is that interesting? Is that important? Should I remember it? What does he mean by that? I should write that down. No, I don't forget, some responding activation that's going on all the time. That's what everyone knows. They may not be able to define it, but that's what's happening for everyone, isn't it? So much so that we take it for granted, until you find somebody else is not activated by that. They didn't think it was important or interesting or funny or beautiful. What's wrong with him? And you begin to recognize these qualities are very changeable, and something one feels delighted by one day, 2 years later, doesn't seem so good anymore. And yet at the time it filled you, it activated you, you're on fire with it, or you're happy with it, and now it's gone. So this world of a process of awareness is both, it floods us and becomes our reality, but it's also extremely changeable and volatile. And yet, what else is there? This is the issue of awareness, of citta. And this is, so this becomes ourself. So one thing is effective and responsive. The other aspect of it, of citta, is it becomes ourself. This is what I am. Because this is what I'm experiencing. What else could I be? I'm in this. This is, I'm not anywhere else. This is happening to me. I'm feeling this. This is happening in my mind or my heart or whatever you want to call it. And I'm feeling like this about it. I'm responding in this way. This is me feeling joyful or angry or upset. That's mine. All that's me. So citta assembles a sense of myself. It feels, it's affected. So it's both that, and it's also established as an ontology, a sense of being something. And the two are seemingly inextricable. Whatever is felt, whatever is perceived, that I am, that's happening to me. Whatever rises up as a response, I'm doing that. I'm frightened, I'm happy, I'm convinced, that's it. So they seem so totally inextricable. The process of meditation starts no, it's not inextricable. Because you begin to linger a little longer in that process of cause, which is something happens to me, and effect. I therefore do this. Cause, call it, effect, or being affected and responding. One is the cause, you get triggered, and then you activate. And as you're meditating and kind of calming and slowing the mind, you begin to witness that process of, this is happening to me, and I feel like that, and I do that. Who is that? And you notice there are two different things. The me who's affected is something penetrates me, something comes into me. I'm sometimes astonished, and then the me who reaches out is of a different nature. And although the two seem inextricable, but when you begin to quiet and calm the mind and just linger in being affected without reacting to it, or noticing the reaction and beginning to slow down the cascade of reactions. So that happened to me, and I feel disappointed, and how dare... No, just feeling disappointed. Instead of, how dare they, and after all I've done, and so forth. So you kind of begin to trim down the story of the reaction. Something happens to me, and instead of going through the last 10 years of my life when this happened and she said that, and you just go, feeling disappointed. Because you've heard the story, and it didn't get you anywhere good. You've heard the reaction, you've been with the reaction, and it didn't take you anywhere useful. You just got more snarled up in it, to this kind of dead-end place of feeling, if it's negative, you feel stuck with it. If you're excited, you want another one. And, and you've been there, and for a while you begin to not want to go there anymore because it's a dead end. More of the same. And actually, you begin to see wherever it takes you is purely either a memory or an anticipation or a projection. Nothing really solid. Just a phantom, a fantasy. One is affected by something, somebody says something, and you come up with, she's like this, and I'm always like that. And, where's all that? Where did it go? And we're creating these scenarios in our minds, or something's creating these scenarios, these images and impressions. And you find with doing that, we're just sitting there and it's happening, and you're sensing, as the process goes on, you're sensing yourself absorbed in it, held by it, sometimes tensed up by it, sometimes weighed down by it. This is all just coming out of my own awareness. My own mind's doing this to me. And you open your eyes and everything's fine. Where's the problem? And all that was created purely by this cascading series of reactions and narratives and stories. So something you starts to get disenchanted with that process of generating that. And it's a slow process because first of all you see it, but you can't stop it. You notice it, here I am again, going into that particular pattern of got to do this, got to do that, I'm like this, she's like that, and feel suffering and stress but can't do anything about it. And then you begin to through being with that, find those places where you can just begin to relax, calm down, forgive, let go, step back, disengage. You find that place of release. You begin to disengage from the story. The conviction in the stories, the conviction in the reactions, the belief that the reactions really are valid and useful. And so essentially what happens is that the me impacted does not, the I am begins to become less convinced. The effect, and instead of the immediate, fully formed conviction in my reactions and responses, I go, oh, here I go again. I'm getting annoyed, feeling frustrated. I've been with this a lot. And your mind widens and disengages. And you go, there he is. And just the thing starts to crumble, starts to break up, just through the lack of conviction in it. This is called disenchantment. And yet the process of becoming disenchanted is not through finding fault or dismissing or being cynical, but just through waking up to it. Where's this going? Goes on to nowhere solid, real, convincing, final, conclusive, satisfactory, just goes on. And I don't want to put any more energy into it. Something ceases to put emotional energy into it. So the I am, the I sense of that becomes, oh, this is my anxiety. Oh, this is excitement. Oh, this is trying to make things work. Oh, this is that. Not I at all. These are reactions and responses. And begin to disengage from that. And through that process of disengaging, not giving energy to them, these things quieten down. The expression is, Buddhist expression is, all sankharas are impermanent, they have the nature to cease. What that means is these activities and responses and reactions, if you don't put energy into them, rather like, not blowing up a balloon, it goes down. Because they can only be supported by constant input. And so we're beginning to recognize how the mind gives input into these and how to not put input into it. It's a kind of disenchantment with doing that. So the feeling and the perception and the impact does not have to generate a being. So rather than these two qualities of awareness, that is the feeling sense and the being sense being inextricably connected, they start to be disjoined. That is, there's feeling, there's an impression, and there isn't that reaction. Or there's less of a reaction. Or the reaction is just seen as a simple reflex that has no long-lasting effect, doesn't become me. It's just, and then you notice it falls away. This is called ceasing. This is the process of ceasing. And because it's something that is associated with just seeing truly how things are, rather than having to put energy into something and input into it and believe in it, it has a supreme quality of faith because it's a faith that almost speaks for itself. That is, ceasing speaks for itself. You don't have to speak for it. You don't have to believe in it or be convinced by it. It speaks for itself. It just does it. And the result of that is there's a quality of steadiness, composure, openness, ease. You feel solid. And what are you feeling solid about? Ceasing. Which again, from the world of appearances and circumstances, sounds bizarre, when you're looking at direct experience. The ceasing of agitation, the ceasing of proliferation, the ceasing of rambling on. The mind, instead of being filled and saturated, feels open. There's space, there's quietness, there's openness, there's a certain... And that itself has a kind of feeling to it. A feeling of ease. It's called the highest or the most useful, paramang, sukhang. Most useful, the most furthering kind of happiness, because it's a happiness that's not conditioned by particular input, but just comes through noticing the way things really are, however they are. And because it's to do with the process of phenomena, any phenomenon, it's universal, it's portable. Where if it was because of a particular phenomenon, it would be limited to the times that that particular phenomenon occurred, wouldn't it? If it's a sound or a sight or a flavour or a mood, then when that isn't there, you wouldn't have the same experience. So that flavour or mood or sight or sound might be extremely happy and wonderful and great, very nice. But then, what happens when it's gone? The happiness of ceasing is that everything does it. So it's not limited. It's called unconditioned. Yeah. So when this is because of awareness being the way it is. Awareness is both has this sense of being affected, and it generates a sense of being out of the process of being affected and responding. The other feature of awareness, of course, is that it's aware. And what awareness is like, it's knowing that has no specific object. It automatically is innately knowing, innately apprehensive, innately sensitive, innately open, innately of that nature. So when so there's the feeling, the effect, and there's the knowing. And as the knowing, but knowing again sounds too cerebral. There's a kind of like the quality of awareness awaring itself. Yeah. And there's no particular adjective you can place upon it. Awaring is just open, steady, no boundaries, no definitions, no designations. If it had a designation or definition, it would be another feeling, another object. But awareness has no particular object. That's why it's able, rather like water having no colour. So you can put blue or green or whatever, and the water will become blue. Put green in it, the water becomes green. Because the water has no innate colour of its own, it can adopt and accept any colour. Rather like awareness. Awareness can be, you can drop anger in it, or you can drop love in it, or you can drop very complex processes in it, and it becomes them. Because it has no innate tone or texture of its own. But did you say that with water? I mean, water doesn't exist? No. Water exists, it just doesn't have a colour. But if you're looking to, if you only believe that existing things have colours, then you say something doesn't have a colour doesn't exist, so water doesn't exist. You say, no, it does exist, it's just you're measuring it in the wrong way. If you're measuring in terms of colour, then you're using the wrong kind of measurement. Same as if you're measuring awareness in terms of feeling or mood or perception or impressions or activations, you say it doesn't exist because it doesn't have them. That's why it can adopt any of them, because it's the nature of human minds, isn't it? It can do just about anything. The most fiendish, the most beautiful, angelic, it can adopt any of them. We could believe the moon's made out of green cheese. We could believe that, the world was created 6,200 BC. They believed that some time ago. And that belief, if you believe in it, it's believable. But awareness can adopt any of these. The beauty of it is that when there becomes this increasing disenchantment and dispassion towards phenomena, towards what manifests, towards what arises, towards perceptions and feelings and activities, and they cease or they dwindle or they fade, something realizes. Awareness is aware. It's nothing more than that. And yet that is unshakable, unbounded, measureless, doesn't fall away. If you can have faith in anything, it's going to arise on that. That search for security, for stability, when it touches that, it's going to say, this is the thing. The thing that's the nothing. This is the place where there isn't shaking, where there isn't falling away, where there isn't loss, where there isn't disillusionment. This is the place. I'm just using terms as best I can for that. It's like if you've been following colours and sounds and sights and believing that's it, as of course they do happen. They are appearances. They do definitely happen. There's no doubt about that. And you begin to see, like clearing the water. Can you imagine having only ever seen water carrying sticks and oil and fish in it? So you thought water was a mass of sticks and oil and colours and fish, because that's all you'd ever seen. And somebody cleaned it and took all that out. What's that? And it's always been there. And you saw it, and you didn't see it. You looked at the water, you saw the colour, you saw the sticks, you saw the fish, and you thought, and you saw it, and yet you didn't see it, because you saw the phenomena. And what would it be like if somebody took that out? You thought, yes, of course it's there all the time, isn't it? It's the thing that carries them. It's the thing that allows phenomena to arise. If we weren't aware of them, they wouldn't arise, would they? Something only happens for you because it arises in your awareness. If there was no awareness, it wouldn't arise, right? You only see things, your eyes. If there's no awareness there, then you don't get the meaning of it. So what is it? And you just begin to realize, well, that's the undying, the non-changing, the boundless, the measureless. It doesn't have a designation, it doesn't have a definition, it doesn't have a colour, shape, sound, mood, feeling, but it doesn't reject them either. It just says that's that. It's like that. It arises, it passes, you can follow it if you like, and it will take you to that ever on-rolling story that never ends. And you can follow that as long as you want, and you'll never get to the end of it. And you won't feel satisfied by it. But go right ahead. until you think, I'm tired of this. It's not giving me the sense of security, stability, happiness that I need. It's like that, isn't it? It's like an endless sail where they're saying, this is the new, this is the wonderful, buy one of these, and as soon as you get it, oh well, you need a new thing. You never get the final satisfactory thing. And that's the nature of phenomena. There's nothing finally wrong with them, other than that's just the limitation. If you don't ask more than that, then you're not disappointed with it. And this quality of disenchantment or dispassion, again, is not a rejection. It's just saying that's the limitation. That's what they do. Enough. Not particularly hungry for more of that, but that's okay. It can happen. But where you become more centered, where your faith resides, is in awareness itself. This is what, like, when we say citta viveka, viveka is the movement, sometimes translated as withdrawal or disengagement, a movement towards awareness itself rather than being placed in phenomena, in objects. So we can begin to recognize that awareness has these different levels to it. There's a very activated feeling aspect of it, but you could almost say right in the center of it, if you like to have a graphic image, it's very still. And that is also a quality that is felt through the whole field of awareness. Once you begin to recognize the still point, the point of disbelief, of dispassion, it starts to radiate its quality of ease and coolness through the entire field of the mind, of the awareness. So, and with that, again, this whole thing about self and not self, which again is quite difficult, because once one has only understood and seen things in terms of the I am that does and reacts and people address and everybody's believing in it, so it becomes adopted, and there's you can do good things with it and so on and so on and so on, and it's full of stories and vitality and energies and processes and possibilities and lovely stuff and strange stuff and so forth. It's incredibly rich. And yet, I don't know if you've ever seen the Mandelbrot set. Ever seen it? You should have a look at it sometime. It's incredibly rich. They've tracked this for millions of equations to create this thing. It just goes on and on and on for hours. It never stops. There's no end to it. And it's very beautiful and very rich and very intricate. And yet, there's that. And but making that into something that's permanent, solid, substantial, that you could rely upon and trust to be unchanging and invariable, this is not possible. So this is where the anatta, not self, because you don't take faith, you don't place your faith, you don't place your center upon all these very intricate and complex reactions and processes, because they have the nature to cease. And that's not annihilating them, it's just acknowledging them for what they are. And there's this knowing of that, which you can't really create a person out of, because it's not to do with creating anything. It's not to do with believing in something, or disbelieving in it, or affirming it, or denying. It's not to do with any activity. So the process of assembling a vivid person out of it just can't take place. And yet it's supremely peaceful, calm, open, balancing, gives one a sense of confidence. It's got a subtly pleasant feeling to it, and can stay through all of it, through a lifetime, when bits of yourself start to change, as they do, don't they? Break up, become unreliable. So it's also called a refuge from the world of change. What is it that helps us to remember that, to access that, to stay in touch with that? This is your own question. What is it that helps you stay in touch with that? Sitting, watching your breath? Fine. Chanting? Fine. What helps you to stay in touch with it? Really, it's a process of, my sense of it, whatever you do, you're going to be working with your awareness. You're going to be calming a feeling, or arousing an activation, arousing a sense of trust, arousing some patience, arousing clarity. You're going to be deliberately working against the habits, the stuck places, the locks, the ongoing narratives that you've heard 1,000 times, the self that you're feeling disappointed by. You're going to be continually working against that. You're going to be continually looking at that, massaging it, checking it out, befriending it, welcoming it, calming it. You're going to be working on it. You work on yourself. And each and every one of us have to know which particular, bits of that paradigm of self are accessible, that you've really seen as something that I've had enough of this one, or this one needs some caring for, this one needs some response to, in order to free it up. That's what you take with you. You take with you a sense of path, and maybe a sense of, there's a few simple reminders, aren't there? Be steady, take your time, look carefully, look thoroughly, don't react. Generate the field of goodwill around all of it, working with goodwill. And because this is for one's welfare. You take that with you. Mindfulness, goodwill, attentiveness, vigilance, dispassion. Take these. And then, you find your life, you follow those, your life is going to shape up around that. And always leads one way to enhancing your access to the unconditioned, where one's faith is supremely placed. So I offer this for your reflection this evening.